Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we're going to dive into what giant anacondas really are. Within the vast pantheon of monstrous creatures brought to life by horror and science fiction cinema, few are as intimidating, mysterious, and magnetic as the colossal snakes from the Anaconda franchise. These reptiles are not just predators amplified by the lens of cinema. They are near mythological forces, creatures that defy natural logic, and, throughout the films, have evolved from wild beasts into dark symbols of human arrogance in the face of nature. Far from being limited to animal brutality, these anacondas embody something much deeper, a threat that combines overwhelming physical power with disturbing cunning. They don't just hunt, stalk, or kill, they seem to understand. There's something in their gaze, in their calculated movements, in the way they strike with surgical precision that suggests a latent intelligence, perhaps even a primitive consciousness, but one that is chillingly effective. What truly sets them apart from their real-life counterparts, the anacondas of the Unects genus, is how the narrative attributes them with almost human-like qualities: memory, rage, a thirst for vengeance. Throughout the saga, it is hinted that some of these snakes remember those who have harmed others of their kind, and that they respond with a resentment as persistent as it is terrifying. This attribution of emotion turns the anacondas into more than monsters. They become antagonists with personal motivations, silent villains, but with a purpose. It's no surprise, then, that they quickly climbed into the cinematic Monster Hall of Fame. Just as the sharks from Jaws redefined our fear of the ocean, or the crocodiles from Lake Placid gave new teeth to animal horror, the anacondas have secured their place as undisputed icons of the genre, generating not only scares but a lasting fascination with what they represent. This video is a deep dive into everything that makes these creatures more than just giant snakes. We'll analyze their mythological and visual construction, explore their symbolism, their predatory behavior, their mysterious abilities, their weaknesses, and of course, their connection to the infamous blood orchid. Because behind every bite, every lethal constriction, and every improbable roar, there's a story blending science, superstition, and human greed. At first glance, they appear to be specimens of Unects murinus or green anacondas, but it quickly becomes clear that what we see on screen far exceeds the limits of biology. These creatures have been altered, whether by accelerated evolution, genetic intervention, or perhaps by older, more hidden forces, until they've become true abominations of nature. Living weapons, seemingly designed more for extermination than for survival. The first film plunges us into the Amazon jungle, where two monstrous specimens emerge as the main threats, accompanied by the hunter Paul Serwan, a character as sinister as he is charismatic. From his very first scene, the rules change. A barge brutally destroyed and a jaguar killed with such violence that the message is clear. These anacondas are not mere animals. They are an unleashed force. Meanwhile, a group of documentarians sails down the Amazon in search of the mysterious Kirikima tribe. Along the way, they encounter Serwan, who claims to know the location of this ancient tribe, although his true intentions are soon revealed: to capture a legendary anaconda alive. His obsession and ambition drive him to take control of the expedition, setting off a chain of fatal events. One by one, the team members begin to fall. Mateo dies trying to help Serwan during a failed capture. Gary, seduced by promises of fortune, is betrayed and devoured. Westridge is ambushed by one of the snakes while attempting to free the boat. With each death, the violence and brutality of the creatures escalate, making it clear this is no longer a fight to escape, it's a war for survival. The climax is unforgettable. One of the snakes captures a survivor in a scene of absolute tension, but is ultimately shot and killed. Serwan, in a final act of desperation, covers the remaining team members in monkey blood to lure the last anaconda. But the creature turns on him and devours him in one of the most memorable sequences of the saga. Finally, the protagonists manage to set the beast on fire and destroy it in an act of fury and release. However, the story doesn't end there. The epilogue reveals that, despite everything, Serwan did indeed lead them to the Kirikima, opening the door to new questions. Is there a symbiotic relationship between the tribe and the snakes? Do they worship them, raise them, or are they victims of an ancient pact that binds them forever? The second installment takes us to Borneo, where the threat is no longer a single creature, but an entire colony. Here, the anacondas have reached even more grotesque proportions, and their behavior has become more aggressive due to their mating season. The presence of the blood orchid, a mythical flower that extends life and alters the body, suggests that these snakes have been transformed by more than just evolution. This time, the human antagonist is Jack Byron, a ruthless explorer working for the pharmaceutical company Wexel Hall, which seeks to exploit the orchid for commercial purposes. His greed is as deadly as the anacondas, and his betrayal of the team members seals the fate of many. Ben is devoured. John Livingston dies, trying to save him. Gordon is paralyzed by a spider and offered as prey. Jack, in one of the coldest betrayals in adventure cinema, escapes on a makeshift raft, leaving the rest at the mercy of the snakes. The survivors are trapped in a jungle where danger hides in every shadow, where the anacondas hunt with impunity, and where the true threat isn't always a monster with fangs, but the human face of greed. In the throbbing heart of the jungle, where the humidity feels like a living weight on your skin, and the insect's song seems to conceal ancient secrets, everything seems to calm for a brief moment. But that truce is nothing more than a mirage. The main group, exhausted and relentlessly hunted by impossible horrors, is forced to enter a narrow, oppressive cave, a crack in the earth that feels as if it were carved by the whispers of death itself. The decision, though necessary, quickly becomes a breaking point. The atmosphere inside the cave is suffocating, the darkness nearly absolute. The walls sweat with moisture, and the echo of each step rings out as if someone, or something, were answering from the depths. In the middle of this hostile environment, Tran, one of the most seasoned members of the team, is caught off guard. A wet snap, a stifled scream, and then silence. One of the monstrous anacondas swallows him whole in an act as swift as it is merciless. His death is not just physical, it's symbolic, the jungle reclaiming what belongs to it. It doesn't take long before another member, Cole, also falls into the scaly clutches of a second creature. Everything points to the same brutal fate, but just as despair threatens to take over, Bill Johnson emerges, armed only with a knife. Driven by adrenaline and fierce determination, he confronts the serpent face to face. In a visceral hand-to-hand struggle, he manages to slay it, saving Cole from certain death. It's a fleeting triumph, but a vital one, a small spark of humanity against the abyss of the wild. Later, the survivors finally catch up to Jack Byron, the traitor whose greed threw them into this hell. In their pursuit, they stumble upon something unexpected, a hidden enclave, undetectable from the air or the river. It's a natural chasm that opens into an underground lake, the biological and symbolic core of the anaconda's kingdom. In this forbidden place, the colossal creatures gather during mating season. They coil, twist, and clash. It's an apocalyptic, primeval scene, as if evolution had reversed millions of years to show us the face of nature at its most unleashed. Jack, a victim of his own arrogance, falls from the cliff in a desperate attempt to escape. His scream is cut short as his body is caught midair by an anaconda rising from the depths. There is no escape, no redemption. Desperate, the survivors come up with one final plan. Use dynamite to trigger a landslide that will bury the lake and destroy the snake's nesting ground. The explosion is enormous. The sky seems to tremble as tons of rock and earth collapse into the lake, entombing the creatures in their own lair. For a brief moment, silence reigns. The calm feels real, but the story is far from over, because just when humanity believes the horror is contained, the nightmare evolves. In the third installment, the focus shifts to J.D. Murdoch, a magnate consumed by illness and his desire for immortality. His body deteriorates, but his ambition only grows. He funds an expedition to the Amazon, where he manages to capture 2 live anacondas. His goal is not to study them, but to control them. In secret laboratories, he begins a genetic modification project, using the legendary blood orchid, whose regenerative properties could grant eternal life. The result, a new lineage of snakes, even more lethal, capable of adapting to urban environments and featuring an unprecedented mutation, a retractable bony spike in their tails, used like a natural blade to tear apart prey. They are organisms designed not merely to survive, but to exterminate. As expected, the experiment spirals out of control. The snakes escape and take refuge in an abandoned factory, which soon becomes their nest. A team of mercenaries sent by Murdoch attempts to contain the threat, but they are annihilated one by one. The factory's corridors turn into death traps, where every shadow could be an ambush. Amid the chaos, one of the snakes gives birth. A new generation emerges among the rubble and corpses. The battle culminates in a massive explosion that destroys the entire complex. The adults die. The offspring, almost all, except one. That single survivor is secretly rescued by a mercenary still loyal to Murdoch. He takes it to a second lab. What no one imagines is that this hatchling will mark the beginning of the next level of horror. The fourth film introduces this new specimen as an adult. Larger, stronger, smarter. Its regenerative ability is so extreme that it can recover from mortal wounds in seconds, bullet wounds, burns, even amputations all heal. It is, in essence, immortal, but it is no longer a controllable creature. It is no longer a genetically modified snake. It has become something aware of its own power. It escapes the lab. In a nightmarish scene, it murders and devours the lead scientist in front of the entire team, leaving behind nothing but blood and screams. Murdoch, cornered by his own creation, deploys the full force of his private arsenal. Helicopters, explosives, high-caliber rifles, none of it is enough. This anaconda doesn't just survive, it counterattacks. It ambushes. It plans. The terror is no longer instinctive. It is tactical. Eventually, Murdoch also falls, swallowed, like so many others, by the very creature he thought he could control. The film's climax unfolds in a final offensive using industrial-grade explosives. The creature is struck by a direct blast. Its body is destroyed, but its eye remains open. And with that final blink, the franchise closes its main arc, but not without leaving one last chilling question. What if it's still alive? With the full story in view, it's time to analyze what makes these snakes more than just cinematic antagonists. Because these creatures are not mere giant reptiles. They are physical manifestations of human arrogance, of science without ethics, of nature striking back. In a way, they are forgotten gods. From their fictional biology to their visual design, every aspect has been meticulously crafted to inspire dread. They surpass their real-life counterparts not only in size, reaching up to 12 meters as adults, but in abilities. Monstrous musculature, feline reflexes, retractable fangs that latch on like hooks, and even impossible adaptations like breathing tongues and articulated skulls. Their eyes, pale yellow and piercing, do not reflect hunger. They reflect judgment. They seem to evaluate rather than devour at random. And their faces, serpentine as they are, project a kind of intelligence that does not belong to the animal kingdom, an intelligence that remembers. Regional and genetic variations add depth. The Amazonian ones, dark and reddish, with scales resembling ritual scars. The Bornean ones, earthy and elusive, camouflaged into their surroundings. The mutated hybrids, sickly toned and grotesquely structured, almost biomechanical. In terms of behavior, they break all animal logic. They don't hunt out of necessity, but out of dominance. They toy with their prey. They pursue even when sated. They regurgitate just to kill again. They exhibit sadistic pleasure. They are not predators, they are executioners. And though they have weaknesses, slower after feeding, their skulls susceptible to damage, these are few. Their sharpened senses, terrain mastery, and calculated brutality make them nearly invincible. The anacondas in this franchise embody the darkest aspect of the Frankenstein myth, the creation that surpasses the creator, the wild that becomes intelligent, and the terror that ceases to be external and becomes an extension of our own failures. They are, in short, the perfect monster for an era of unrestrained science and irreversible consequences. They are not just snakes. They are living warnings. And perhaps, somewhere in a forgotten corner of the jungle, they're still waiting.